Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast after another disappointing weekend for Scottish Rugby, to say the least. We'll start off by just reminding everyone of our subscription offer that's on just now. Obviously, you get 6 months access to the website and all the great content that we have for just £1, and it's £12 for the year as well. You can read all of Gav's brilliant analysis of the game over the weekend and everything else that we put on the website. Go get that. But wait until after you listen to us rant for a wee while first. Gav, also you were in Rome for the game. How was that?
It was a good trip. A good trip wasted by a really dreadful second half. Just so disappointing. I felt like they had reasonable control of the game first half, and then it just vanished. I put the point to Gregor Townsend that they weren't able to get the momentum back like they weren't in Wales. And he disputed that because he said they did get momentum back. And I think there's a difference between stopping another team's momentum and having, control of the game yourself. It was just, the whole thing was really really flat and really, we've gone from 2 weeks ago on these podcasts talking about could Scotland win the championship to, there's now a real question. We might finish fifth.
Yeah.
It's not good. We can get into it a bit more detail in a minute.
Yeah, I think I said on Friday's podcast where we were talking about it that if Scotland want to be viewed as challengers for these sort of tournaments, if they want to be viewed as one of the top nations, they need to start going to places like Rome. I know they've had good record in Rome over the last few years, but it's always been that sort of way where we say, it's a dangerous one, Italy could win. But I said that if they want to start being viewed in that way, they need to start going and just blowing Italy away. They need to start winning there comfortably and not really worrying about it. But it just didn't seem to happen. I mean, I think you said it there was some control in the first half, played some good rugby at times, and then it just seemed to drop off. Obviously, they let Italy right back into it before half-time. But, Steph, where do you see it? Is it a mentality thing with Scotland, or is it just they're not quite good enough?
No, I think it is a mentality thing. I think I've had concerns about mental frailties in the Scotland team for quite a long time. I mean, if you look at all the games in the campaign so far, maybe barring the England game, I think that was the best performance that we've seen so far, but I don't think it was perfect. There's been an incident in each game that has knocked them off course. So in the Wales game, we had a really good first half, and then yellow cards started coming at the end of the first half, and then it all went completely to pot in the second half until we managed to just about recover at the end, but still didn't manage to get a bonus point. Still didn't have that ruthless edge to know that how important a bonus point could be. I'll get onto my bonus point rant later, but in the circumstances, how important that could be. And then in the France game, we had that period where there was a lot of kicking back and forth and it wasn't working. They in the first half, France had been bad under the high ball, so we thought, we'll kick it up in the air, then wait for them to make a mistake. They didn't, and then we didn't really know what to do for a while. Then in the Italy game, we came out in the second half, scored that try that was disallowed, and then they seemed to go into complete panic afterwards. We just suddenly looked really disorganized. When at any point anybody had the ball, it didn't really seem like we knew who to pass to. We didn't know, what a setup was. And I remember saying to my partner about 70 minutes, I was like, we're not winning this game. It just didn't feel like we were gonna be able to, get back into the lead. So I do think it's a mentality thing, because clearly there's very talented players across that team, but we just don't seem to be able to recover when something doesn't go our way in a lot of these games, and it's a real concern. And I've heard people say, after this Italy game that, this team are never going to win this championship. I can see why they say that, but I'm wondering if this team can win this championship, but without Gregor Townsend as head coach. I think that the time has possibly come, but maybe we can discuss that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to go on to that, and I think it's a fair thing to say. I mean, obviously, didn't really want to answer it after the game on Saturday, Gav. He was kind of a bit, I don't know, maybe not snappy about it, but he wasn't too keen to come forward and speak about it. Obviously, before the game, he sort of said he was happy-ish with the tournament so far, but then all of a sudden, like you say, there's a real possibility of finishing 5th in the championship, which just seems bizarre given how things went. Is it a time where you maybe need to look at somebody else? Because he's been in the job quite a long while, but it just seems to not be able to go take that next step again.
Yeah, I think first things first, I think it's right to point out that we've made progress. You know, I think we've become a better team, and as Gregor rightly said on Saturday night, to those of us in the Stadio Olimpico, the expectation has increased because 5 or 6 years ago, beating England, avoiding an embarrassment like the one we've suffered on Saturday, okay, tick the box. We've had a reasonable Six Nations.
Yeah.
It's not the case anymore. It just doesn't, beating England just and scraping by against Italy isn't enough. And we're coming into this championship. We were the only team really settled, with a settled squad, the same coaching staff as the World Cup. You know, France are missing Dupont. Ireland have come into this with no Johnny Sexton. England were in disarray. Wales have basically a complete rebuild, and you know, Italy have a new head coach, and we're now looking at 2 wins, which is a regression from where we were last year in terms of results. But actually, if you know, we came so close to not winning in Wales, and these things now turn from, oh, if Sam Skinner's try had been given against France, to, well, if we hadn't hung on against Wales, we could be in real bother. And I think Steph made a good point earlier that the mental side of it, there's a worry about this squad's fragility, in that they just don't seem to be able to say, okay, we're like Wales, for example, we're 20 points in front. Let's go and put 40 points on Sunday. Then we can have a 10-minute drop off.
Yeah.
And you know, I said to Gregor, are the players learning quickly enough? And they're not. You know, regardless of what people say, these players are good enough individually to be producing better than they are internationally. And to have these massive drop-offs in games and then not be able to come back is a fault of the players, but also there's a huge problem that we don't look to change things quickly enough. It was apparent after 50 minutes on Saturday that once George Horne's try had been rightly chalked off, then Italy scored. Ross Vincent, I think, scored not long after. It was panic, you know. And as Steph says, from somebody who was watching home, you felt it in the stadium that Scotland fans now thought we're in bother here. And it worries me that our coaching staff didn't say, okay, we need to do something. Let's throw on 4 subs. Let's just change the dynamic of the game. I've seen a few comments about Ali Price's performance just when I was travelling home today. But that game was crying out for an Ali Price from the start to give us that control. His kicking game's pretty good. I unfortunately think if this is rubber stamped one thing, we badly need Sione at 12 because he gives us that go forward. And if it's not Sione, I think it has to be Stafford against certain teams. I think Cam Redpath's a really fine player, but I think it needs to be Sione or Stafford against teams that, like Italy, like Ireland. That's a huge worry now for next week. I just think George Horne's great off the bench. He just brings that. He can up the tempo, and him and Finn in the sort of middle third of the game, it just felt too loose. And I was worried that the coaches didn't think we need to change this. And yeah, interesting. There was a line from Gregor after the game that he said, "Today doesn't define us. Games in the past will define us, and next week will define us." I hope next week doesn't define Gregor Townsend's Scotland, because he might be in a bit of bother, and it might be time to look at somebody else. I know his contract's up in 2026, but yeah, it's a tough one to come back from the World Cup exit in the manner that we went out and not really firing the shots in the two big games against South Africa and Ireland, and then 2 wins in the Six Nations. And actually, when you take a further step back, we've beaten, a rebuilding Wales by 1 point.
Yeah.
And England, who aren't really sure what they're supposed to be doing at home. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think Gregor Townsend's got a lot of work to do in a short space of time to turn things round.
Just go back to the sort of George Horn stuff with Ben White. And obviously, Ben White wasn't involved in Saturday, but obviously before the game on Thursday, the press conference, Gregor kind of said that something had to give at some point because he's going back and playing France. He's travelling a lot. He's doing this, he's doing that. But with 2 weeks left of the championship, did he really need rested at that point? Should Scotland have this went, you know what, maybe take a couple of days during the week, rest a bit more, don't train as much, be ready for the game and go for it? Because I felt like he was a big miss on Saturday. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just felt like a strange one, like all around. And then obviously, even as well, again, go back to what he said on Thursday about George Horn. He was asked about the super sub tag and stuff like that. And he seemed pretty confident, like, look, we trust George Horn coming off the bench and helped us win games. So I felt like he should have almost kept that way again. And just like, I felt like he was almost rewarding him for being that sort of like loyal player that will sit on the bench. He won't complain too much. He'll come on and he'll help you win games, rather than just that he really felt that he should be starting. It all felt a bit thrown together at the last minute at certain stages.
It's another thing about, so people talk about the Scotland team being too nice at points. That's a nice feature. It's like, we'll give this guy a start because I think he should be rewarded for having, been good in training and things like that. But you've got to be picking the players that are going to win you games. And that is all that matters at the end of the day. And, players have, who are sidelined because of that, have got to be able to take it.
Yeah.
And know that that's what's best for the team. And I'm sure that George Horn can take that. And I do understand, the points around player welfare. I'm sure that, it has been difficult for Ben White, traveling because of being it too long now and things like that, and having played a lot of rugby. But he's been one of the star players this Six Nations. His kicking game has been great, and it's made such a difference in games. And I don't know whether it was a bit of complacency, possibly because it was Italy. I don't know, but yeah, I do really think he should have been involved in some way, even if he was benched, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good point. Could just turn it around, but right. I just want to ask this as well. We also criticised Gregor a bit there for some stuff, but do the players need to take a bit more responsibility on it as well? I mean, you look at it after the Wales game, Finn kind of spoke about how the players didn't really take the messages on board, didn't put them into practice in the second half that the coaches were trying to get to them. Felt like the same sort of thing again on Saturday against France. Obviously, it turned into just a big kicking game. You've got Finn, who's also a tremendous player. And then his co-captain is also Rory Darge, who's still relatively inexperienced. Is there maybe a leadership issue in the team that there's just not enough of them, really? If that makes sense. What do you think of that, Gav?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. But I think there's, Finn's got probably 70-odd caps. Grant Gilchrist not far away from the same. If you look at the wider squad, Ali's captain Scotland, Jamie Ritchie's captain Scotland, but they do have to take more responsibility. Whether there's a leadership problem, I'm not sure. I think one thing that has improved is the way we are. This sounds silly to say in the context of being on the wrong side of another massive penalty count, but the way we're perceived by referees, I think Jamie Ritchie, I think, rubbed some referees up the wrong way, and I think Finn is better at the way he communicates with refs directly. The discipline is a problem because the George Horn try is chalked off because Pierre Schumann runs into somebody. He doesn't need to. It's a daft penalty. We then give away another one on the back of that. We don't regroup at all, and we're all at 6s and 7s defensively. So Blair Kinghorn comes into the line, which leaves a huge hole, and they put the ball through and go and score. There is clearly an issue with the players not taking messages on or being able to think on their feet, whether that's over coaching or I'm not sure what it is. But it is a problem because too often, as we said earlier, we get ourselves into these positions and we don't think quickly enough to be able to address it ourselves. You know, in Wales, we were down to 14 for so long in that second half that we actually, when we came back to 15, sort of regrouped a wee bit then. But on Saturday, and at no stage in the second half did I think, it's fine, Scotland will come back and they'll sort this out. It just felt a mess.
Yeah. I think Steph made that point earlier as well, but kind of like you never expected Scotland to win that game when they were behind at that point. And comparing it to the way England were on Saturday again against Ireland for the last 5 minutes or whatever it was when they were chasing that final score, it felt like England were going to get it right through that play. It never felt like at any point that they weren't. And they were down to 14 at that point as well because of injury. It wasn't like they were flying on all cylinders. And it's just, it does just feel like there's that sort of Scottish mentality again of sort of like a fire everybody up and then just glorious failure at the end. It's just baffling at times.
Do you know, the situation on Saturday might actually suit us because probably for the first time in the whole championship, they'll be completely written off.
Yeah.
They will be given not a chance. And I don't know what it is about us as Scottish people. We just like that underdogs tag, and it almost is about proving a point to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only crumb of comfort I take from having to go to play Ireland in Dublin on Saturday, because I think if we play like we did in the second half, and we have done it in periods of the championship, it could be a long afternoon, I would worry that there was a repeat of the last two games in the two World Cups that just totally got away from Scotland, and they never really fired a shot at all.
Yeah, we'll look ahead to Saturday then. Obviously, a couple of changes to the squad today. Obviously, there's nobody that has played that has dropped out, but did you expect to see any more sort of changes? Anybody sort of brought in at any point to sort of, I don't know, fire things up a wee bit? It just felt a wee bit of change might have helped.
Yeah, I certainly did. I thought there might have been another couple. I actually wondered if we might see Chris Harris. Yeah. I thought he would have helped on Saturday, and I think that's a part of Sione's game, that he's really taken on that role as the defensive leader that Chris Harris played for so long, and we missed that because we looked a bit sort of unsure of ourselves at times, and I think having somebody with that confidence and that leadership to kind of carry through the defence is, we're going to probably have not a lot of ball against Ireland, and somebody like Chris Harris would have made a difference. Hamish Watson, I don't know what to make of that. In the squad, not in the original squad, then he's added in, now he's back out. It's a strange old situation, and I do feel like he's got, he's 32 or 33, but I feel like he's got more kind of miles in the tank, but he just seems to have fallen completely out of favour.
Yeah, it's definitely strange. We'll maybe be a bit more positive with a very, very, very slim chance that Scotland could still, win the championship if things go their way. With a lot of, obviously, there's 1,000 different things that need to go right for them.
It's just the 80-odd points we need to score or something stupid
it's
like that.
obviously not going to happen, and we don't actually believe it will. But it's still a possibility. So, what do you think?
It would be very Scottish if we won 39-0, the margin that we need, only scored 3 tries and kicked 16 penalties. It would be that would it surprise me? Well, it would surprise me, but it would just be classic Scotland. No, I guess
it's a positive. We're the only team that can win the Triple Crown, I guess.
Well, yeah, that is something
it will happen.
That is there to play for. I suppose there is something there that it's not like they're going over to Dublin and have absolutely nothing to play for. It's obviously got the pride anyway after last week. You need to sort of bounce back for the weekend, and then Triple Crown's a big thing to win.
Yeah, and I hope that as well. I hope that this result against Italy will be a moment of brutal honesty. I think for the team, because I think there's been a lot of cracks papered over by big results. We sneaked the win against Wales. It was our first win in Cardiff since 2002. We've had big wins against England that have got monkeys off our backs over the past few years. We won in Paris for the first time in goodness knows how long. But I just feel like we're still this team that can pull a big win out of somewhere, when against anyone on a day. But that those moments have papered over the fact that we have made progress. Obviously, they're a better Scotland team than the Scotland team with the noughties or stuff like that. But these occasional big wins have papered over the cracks that we're actually not a team that can contend for the championship. There's a gap there, and I just think I hope this result will ignite a brutally honest conversation about that, and not just think that we can contest the championship just because we've beaten England for the 4th time in a row.
Yeah. I've just got one last question on Gregor again, just to go back to it. I don't want to sound like I'm just criticising him a lot, but there's a lot of chat sort of like he's been a bit slow to use his bench over the championship. And again, on Saturday, there was until the last 10 minutes before he sort of emptied it, and even then he didn't even empty it because Kyle Rowe was still unused. Is that a fair criticism, Gav?
I think so. I think, it's, as I said earlier, it's a frustration that when these games start, the tide starts to turn against us. We don't immediately react and say, okay, let's just get fresh legs on and sort this out. Some of the guys that came off the bench on Saturday made a difference. Jamie Ritchie was decent. Matt Fagerson threw himself about. Sam Skinner scored his try. But the crux of the problem in some positions is that I'm not convinced Gregor trusts the guys he's got on the bench. For example, how long did Elliot Miller-Mills get? And he struggled at the scrum, and Kyle Rowe didn't get on. There was an argument, 9 points down, for saying, okay, let's throw a guy like Kyle Rowe, a total game breaker, on for a more dependable, reliable Kyle Steyn, and just say to him, go and have a go. Go and get off your wing, excuse me, and just cause mayhem. And instead, Scotland reverted back to that control and the kicking game that actually probably was needed half an hour before. The time when Ali came on, the time was kind of past for kicking, and we were chasing the game. Yeah, I do think and I think Gregor himself has admitted that he should have used the bench earlier in the France game. And yeah, obviously we've had guys like Ben Healy's been on the bench and only played 3 minutes in 3 games. Kyle Rowe didn't get on at the weekend. Elliot Miller-Mills is hardly featured. I think it is a problem, and I think it maybe speaks to the strength and depth or lack thereof in the kind of wider pool.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. But right, we'll just obviously we'll be back later in the week to talk about the Ireland game in more detail. But we'll just go with some very early predictions. Steph, can Scotland get anything out of it?
Oh man, no, I don't think so, because England have just lost to Ireland have just lost to England by a point, which has cost them a back-to-back Grand Slam, something they were really, really aiming for, and that is just going to make them so angry. And the manner in which that happened, and I just think that in terms of a margin of victory, I can see Scotland scoring some tries, but I would imagine that Ireland are beating us by at least 20 points, to be honest. And in Dublin on St. Paddy's weekend. Why is it always on St. Paddy's weekend? It just seems to fall that way. They just all the things line up for Ireland that they're gonna go. It's gonna be the Grand Slam game on St. Paddy's weekend. It's obviously not now, but it just all seems to line up. I don't think Scotland are winning this game. Unfortunately, I hope we see a reaction, but I can't see them. I can't see Ireland giving up this championship. They know they need to win, because if they don't, then England will know exactly what they need to do when they play France in the evening. Yeah. And having watched that performance from England, which I think was miles better than anything I've ever seen for a couple of years from England, they were so aggressive. They suddenly had attacking intent, and they just seem to know what to do against Ireland. So, if Ireland were to mess this up, then I think we could easily end up with England winning the championship, which no Scotland fan wants to see, I guess.
Is that something you go along with, Gav? Sort of same view, sort of,
the sentiment about England, or
we're just about how Scotland will get on.
Yeah, fair point. I think that's unfortunately where we're at. I think on our day, I would like to back Scotland against most teams, but I think the teams that we've shown that we struggle against are the teams that can revert to a really physical, forward-orientated, just almost 10-man rugby. But Ireland are so much more than that. Their systems are so good. Their individuals are better than ours. I had a discussion at the weekend. If you were picking a Lions team just now, how many Scots do you drop into the Irish team? A couple of English guys, a couple of Welsh guys. Put Finn in the Ireland team, and I think you're just about there.
Yeah.
It's I think it's almost mission impossible on Saturday. But as I said earlier, the underdogs tag might suit us, and I'm not sure the Scotland fans in Dublin on Saturday night will be in a strange position, because if we do get beat, I suspect some Scotland fans will want us to lose by a significant margin, ship 4 tries, and so that England don't then win the championship. Because I think if we deny Ireland a bonus point and England running a few against France, who knows? So interesting final weekend. Obviously the Triple Crown to play for. Haven't won that for a long, long time. So that it gives us something to kind of clutch at, but I think it's a long shot, a very long shot. And I think one thing I would just to finish, I think it would take the best performance Scotland have put in under Gregor Townsend by quite a distance for us to beat Ireland on Saturday.
Yeah. So on that cheery note, we will leave you there. Just a reminder again that you can subscribe to ScotlandRugbyNews.com for £1 for the next 6 months, or £12 for the year, and you'll get all this great coverage, where we'll be a bit more positive about Scotland hopefully at some point. So thanks for joining us.